Hey, indie filmmakers, I'm Griffin Hammond.
I'm Nick Bodmer, and on this week's episode, I have a brand new HDR monitor to try out.
Plus, your questions about editing video on a Surface Pro, finding video work through the internet, and whether to place a lavalier mic on the bride.
Hello, Griffin.
Hi, Nick.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. I have a cold today, so hopefully I am not sniffling through the whole podcast.
You probably will be, but we'll let it slide this time.
So for those of us listening to the podcast and the version of me that is not yet watching this and editing this, explain to me what your shot looks like today.
It looks a little different. I have a different wall behind me now. It's not a very exciting wall yet. I'm in a different house, so I moved. I feel like it's been a while since we recorded, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a few weeks.
It's been a few weeks. So yeah, moved into a new house. This is my new office. It is not fully set up yet, so bear with me on it looking a little boring back here. Hoping to put something fun on the wall to make the shot look a little better. But I got a desk. I built a new custom desk for my office. Maybe I'll send a picture of that, Griffin, that you can share. It's a big one. It's a mega desk. It's a mega desk, 98 inches long, which I enjoy. One big
looks
long
like you
desk,
have two people working on it at the same time.
You could, but I like just to be able to stretch my arms out. Like that. That's good.
Is there anything about this new office? It's not like you designed the house or something, so it's not like you put the office where you wanted it to be. But I'm curious if there's anything about the new office that makes it any better than your old office for podcasting.
Well, I have two can lights directly above me, which I think are maybe providing a little bit of nice light. I've got a big window behind me, or behind the camera right now, so I'm getting some natural light. It's not bad. I think it's going to look pretty good, especially once I pretty something up over here. I'm thinking a bookshelf, like right here, guys. But what do you think should be behind me for a shot?
I wonder if it
like
sounds
this?
any different.
I bet it does. I'm not talking into the corner anymore, which is probably helpful. I was sitting in the corner before.
Yeah.
So we'll see, won't we, when we listen to this?
Everyone, give Nick your early feedback on if you like this new room. I think you still have the old house for.
Yeah, we should hopefully be out of it by the end of this week.
But if enough people on the podcast said they really hated this new office, you could move back,
sell this
right?
house and move back. Yes, that's what I'll do. So I'm dedicated.
Okay.
Hey, Griffin, we've got a hashtag Ask Griffin question for you this week.
Oh, one of those non-filmmaking questions about my personal life.
Non-filmmaking questions about Griffin. They're his favorite, guys. All right, we got a tweet from My Name is Ray. Griffin, what's your favorite restaurant, favorite food in NYC? That's New York City, if you weren't sure.
I mean, there's so much good food here. I always feel like I'm leaving out a lot of things by claiming a favorite, but I probably should say a restaurant that I've been to twice in the last week because I do like it a lot. It's called Speedy Romeo.
Speedy Romeo sounds Italian.
Yeah, it's an Italian place. They have a lot of pizza. It's probably my favorite pizza in New York, which feels sacrilegious to say that because it's actually St. Louis style pizza.
Oh, don't they use like ketchup and Velveeta cheese and stuff?
You're thinking of Provel cheese. They use a processed cheese called Provel, and it is delicious. And I love it.
No, it sounds horrible. And you're from Chicago, so you have Chicago pizza, then you have New York pizza, and then St. Louis pizza is like way down at the floor. It's horrible.
Yeah, I'm really just bucking all the like popular pizzas around the United States and going with the underdog. I love St. Louis style pizza. It's got this gooey, smoky cheese called Provel. It's kind of flat, so I just love the consistency. And Speedy Romeo is like a really good restaurant. They just make a really good version of that style of pizza.
Well, I'm gonna have to try it. When do I get invited back to New York, Griffin?
I don't know.
You're supposed to say, "Oh, Nick, you have a standing invitation anytime you want." That would be the response. Not like, "I'm not sure when I'm inviting you again."
Like at this moment, you haven't earned your invitation.
My return trip. Well, you got to come out and check out the new house. I've got a pool now. It's like I live in a resort.
Also, one of my favorite places in New York just opened a location in Las Vegas. The
Which is?
Comedy Cellar.
Did they really?
Yeah, like I think it opens tomorrow, Thursday,
Where at?
April 5th. I think it's at Rio, the casino.
It is. I just Googled it.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be interesting.
I don't really know what that means, how you can open a New York comedy club in Vegas, but presumably it's owned by the same people and can get some of the same talent to show up.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Vegas is a popular place for comedians, so
Yeah.
it'd be interesting.
So I'll have to check that out. I'll have to come see your new house.
I wonder if they'll have the same kind of, this is where people go to test out their material and no phones and things like that, or if it's more touristy.
I mean, it's already a touristy place in New York, but yeah, I'm sure they will be kind of protective of their comedians.
Well, don't forget, you can ask your own hashtag AskGriffin question by submitting a tweet on Twitter with the hashtag AskGriffin.
Just send your tweets to twitter.com.
When you write it with a bird, it's called a tweet.
So a few weeks ago, we got an email from a company in where? China?
Good question. Don't know.
Is that where what's the company called?
BenQ.
BenQ.
Taiwanese from Taiwan.
Oh, Taiwanese, yeah.
Yeah, they're a pretty popular monitor company.
Yeah. And they were wondering if we wanted to try out an HDR monitor.
High
and I understand
dynamic
you have this monitor in
yes,
your office right now?
They sent it to me. You can actually see this brown box that's in my office unopened. Is it right here? So it came kind of while I was in the process of packing up my old house. Now I'm setting up my new office, and that is on the docket to test that out. See how it works.
Did it come from Taiwan?
It has some Asian lettering on it. I don't know. Let's look. Hang on.
Maybe. So I think they offered for me to do a review video, and this is not uncommon. I get a lot of emails from companies asking if I want to do a review video. Okay, from California. And usually, I mean, I think most emails I get, I just ignore or I say, no, that's not appropriate. I'm kind of waiting for things that feel like they're worth sharing with our YouTube audience, like things that you would actually be interested in. And this was something I was interested in, but also felt like I wasn't the one who should test it out because I'm not really a monitor guy.
I am.
So I asked them, what do you think about Nick testing it out? And they were like, that's great.
Hey, I'm all for it. Speaking of monitors, my current monitor just went blank, and I can't see the screen. So I got that going for me.
Perfect time for a new monitor.
Exactly.
So have you've opened this thing or no?
I actually have not even opened it yet. It is still in a box.
Yeah.
But I do want to test it out. Go ahead.
We haven't even talked about this monitor in a few weeks since the prospect of it being mailed to you. I forget even like what size it is or why it's special.
Well, I had the specs up on my screen, but it's gone. It's gone right now, Griffin. Let me see if I've got it on my phone. Do you have that chat window we had open a while ago? Maybe you can run down it.
Oh, in our private Slack channel about the podcast that is only you and me talking to each other. So this BenQ monitor is a 31.9 inch LCD monitor.
That's a big monitor, and it's a big box. I was like, it looks like a TV might be in there, like a small TV, but it's actually a big monitor.
So I guess that's a 4K resolution. Although, like, wouldn't you expect a monitor that big to be even bigger than 4K?
I'm not sure they make 5K monitors now, but those are crazy expensive. Those are like $2,000 or $3,000.
Yeah. I mean, isn't my iMac more resolution?
It's a 5K.
It's like
yes.
But is that because it's like a Retina display?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's more than 4K.
My iMac screen is not high dynamic range, right?
No. It's not.
So I'm not getting as much range of luminance in each pixel.
Correct. It is a P3 monitor, though, so you have some... It has great colors and stuff, probably more accurate colors than this one will have. We'll see when I check it out. But you've got a great screen on there, but not HDR. Not HDR.
Although this one says it's... This BenQ monitor, it says it's 95% P3 color gamut.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So the same color technology you were just talking about in the iMac screen, this has roughly that?
Yes. That's exactly right. All right, I'm back up and running.
Why would you even want an HDR monitor?
Well, you yourself have been talking about wanting to get into shooting HDR footage, right? And HDR televisions and things like that are becoming more and more prevalent. So my thought is having an HDR monitor is sure going to make the editing process for HDR a lot easier. So that's kind of what I'm thinking I'd like to test out is, you know, what's the actual workflow to get HDR editing working on both Mac and PC.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was thinking I would put together. Is, you know, I don't have color calibrated sensors and things like that. I'm not gonna be able to tell you, you know, how great colors look and things like that nature. But I thought, does this monitor work for editors who want to pursue HDR editing, and what's the process to get that configured? That's kind of where I was thinking I'd go with it. What do you think else I should check out? What else would you want to know?
Well, I imagine it must have some gaming implications too.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, there not a ton of games are HDR compatible now, but there are some. I think I own one. I think Battlefield 1 is HDR. So that's another thing. Yeah, I could definitely check out and see, like, does it make a difference to the layman's eyes?
Oh yeah, one of the things it says on here is it has 4K HDR support with PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. So those systems both support HDR, I guess.
I guess they do. I don't have one of those, but I have a gaming PC that will. So
yeah, it's funny because when I imagine an HDR monitor, I think like, oh, that'd be great because after I edit a piece and export it to 2020 colors, the Rec 2020 color space, then I could watch it in all its HDR glory, the way that I've seen at trade shows on nice HDR TVs. But I completely forgot that I should be able to preview that during the editing process. I actually don't really know how Final Cut handles that, but presumably if I'm bringing in high dynamic range content, I should be able to edit it and see what it looks like before exporting. I guess all I have to do is make a project that's a Rec 2020 color space.
Right, but you currently don't have a monitor that will display HDR, right?
Right, yeah. So right now it'd be kind of pointless, or if I was going to make an HDR video, I'd be kind of doing it blind and then throwing it onto a nice TV and seeing, oh, wow, there's all that.
Look how great it is.
That range. Yeah.
Well, it might be interesting for you to put together just like a short clip or something that you master in regular and HDR and send it my way, and I can take a look and see if there's a noticeable difference.
That would be cool, yeah.
But I'd like to know from the audience anything else they'd like to see tested on an HDR monitor. What do you want to know? What can I check out for you and report back? So let us know.
Yeah, this is kind of the pre-review, even the pre-unboxing. It's the
pre-unboxing.
Still
I was
boxed.
thinking I could even unbox it live on a podcast, but I'm not sure we're going to do that.
I can imagine what's inside. It's a big black monitor wrapped in plastic.
I think you're right. Should I do an unboxing video just for fun?
I think that could be part of your review.
No, standalone. I'm going to get like 4 videos out of this. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Well, now I have to find my way back to our script because I'm on our Slack channel. There we go.
Well, we've got an email question from Bridget.
Yes.
She says, number 1, can't thank you enough for your podcast. I look forward to your always informative content each week. I hope that, quote, makes sense. End quote. Smiley face.
She likes your makes sense catchphrase.
Yes. Thank you, Bridget. My question is likely mostly for Nick, though I'm interested in Griffin's specific advice as well. You don't really want my advice, probably. I'm editing a short-form documentary and prefer to edit on my Surface Pro 4 256 gigabytes, i7, 16 gigs. However, when I attempt to load all the footage from the desktop without any other documents saved directly on the PC, it says that she's maxed out her capacity for space. And she says, in her experience, editing from attached external hard drives is slow as molasses. Any recommendations for workarounds when you can't fit all your footage on your laptop?
Well, I can tell you what I emailed her back, and you can tell me if I missed out on the Nick knowledge. I mean, it just sounds like she's running out of space. If the Surface Pro has 256 gigabytes, if she's shooting 4K video, she might be filling that up really fast, or, you know, half that might already be filled up from all her apps. So I just suggested if there's a way, I don't know what she's editing on, if it's Premiere, but if she has a way to do proxy footage and maybe keep all the nice files on that external hard drive, but if she can edit proxy, it would take up a lot less space on the drive.
Yep, I think you're right on. You know, if you 256 gig SSD in a laptop is not a ton of space, especially, you know, the operating system and your basic application installs are going to eat up a big chunk of that. You're probably left with 150 gigs of space for other stuff. And like you said, with 4K, that gets eaten up very quickly. So I think your idea of editing in proxy, which basically renders out lower quality versions that you keep on the laptop, and that's what you edit, so it doesn't look as good while you're editing. But then when you finish the project and render out the final version, it goes back and pulls the really high quality ones off the hard drive, so you get full quality output. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose you could put a bigger SSD in there if you can find one.
Surface Pro, I'm doubting is user upgradable, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Those, they're actually really cool. They kind of convert between tablet and laptop mode, which is kind of neat. But
yeah, I'm wondering, like, is the Surface Pro actually a viable editing computer?
Editing machine? I mean, it's an i7, 16 gigs of RAM. I mean, they're pretty beefy boxes. You know, they probably get hot, and you probably burn through battery pretty fast. But yeah, I think that's a perfectly fine box to edit on.
Yeah.
I edit primarily on a 13-inch laptop, so.
Right. Well, yeah, I feel like almost any documentary style project I'm shooting in 4K, I always feel like I need about 100 gigs available. I mean, 100 gigs might even just be what I need for like a 2-day shoot. And then if this particular project has another shoot somewhere else, I'm going to need another 100 gigs. So I run into that even on my computers that have, I mean, I think my current laptop might have a terabyte or 2 terabytes. And even then, I'm still concerned about space every once in a while if I have too many projects going on at once. So I could definitely see 256 filling up really fast.
Yeah, I have a 512 and I fill up, so 256 is tough.
She was also curious about a faster GPU, but it sounds like in this case that wouldn't really solve anything, because I imagine what she's running into when she's running editing off the external hard drive, that's no limitation of the GPU or the processor. It's just that external hard drive is probably a spinning disk, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not a ton of bandwidth to get the video files off that hard drive and into the editor fast enough. So
yeah, just transferring them slowly.
Yep.
I mean, you could get a faster external hard drive, right? Like,
you get an external SSD. You know, that Surface Pro probably has USB 3, which is very fast. So an external SSD would be another option to look at.
Yeah,
they're a little pricey, but
yeah,
if you need more space, that's the way to go.
I love an SSD, but yeah, they're always expensive.
Getting cheaper all the time, though.
Here's a tweet that we got from Nicholas, a different Nicholas, who is having a problem with limited... Oh, this is actually a very similar question. Problem with limited HD hard drive space for projects. Shooting with GH5 in 4K and 10-bit, and my video files and the project are massive. Then encoding the original files to ProRes 422 in Final Cut 10 takes up more space. How do I improve workflow to conserve space?
So is he encoding all of his raw footage into ProRes before he edits? Is that
I think so.
what I'm understanding? And
Yeah.
now I don't really do much 4K. I just edit the native 4K files as they come off. I do not transcode to ProRes. Is that something you do?
I don't do that, and it's his problem, but it might also be helping him. I understand why he's doing it. Anytime you bring footage into Final Cut Pro 10, you can click on that. You can right-click on that clip and transcode. There's two options you can transcode. You can either make proxy media, like we were just talking about for Bridget. You can tell the computer to make the lower res version to edit, but you can also tell it to make optimized media, which in this case, in Final Cut, wants to make ProRes 422. That's the optimized media, which takes up a lot more hard drive space, but it's easier on your processor to decode and encode. So
yep.
you should have a more seamless, less laggy editing experience, but it's going to take up a huge amount of hard drive space. But like, that's why the optimized media is there, is like if you have a slower computer. But I guess I've kept up, and my machines have always been okay with dealing with 4K and even 10-bit files. So you might try without the optimized media.
Yeah, I think he's got two potential solutions here. One is don't encode to ProRes 422, because that just takes up so much space.
Yeah, I don't think it's improving the quality of your end product. I think it's really just to make it easier on your computer.
Right. But when you go to edit the original 4K files without optimizing them, if that's not working or it's too laggy or your computer can't keep up, then maybe same as Bridget, you should instead create proxy media, and that way you can get your editing done without taking up a ton of more space.
Yeah, all you do is you just flip your Final Cut over to proxy mode, and in that little screen that you're editing in, I bet you'll barely notice the difference. I always think the quality looks pretty good. And then when you're done, you flip it back to optimized, and it'll access the original files, and then you export. You just export with the nice quality stuff.
Make sense? Yes. You want to read this email from Remy from France?
Yeah. So Remy also has, actually he has a different ZUNTech crane model than I have. I have the ZUNTech crane V2. There's also a 2, and there's also a new one called the Plus, and he has the ZUNTech crane Plus. He loves it, and he's wondering if I use full manual focus when using the crane, which I do. And that's how...
You're a crazy person.
Well, not like, I guess I'm leaving it on manual. Well, I don't know. I guess I'm not on full manual. I have it on push to focus autofocus.
That's
so
where
I'll
I was
focus at
going
the
with
beginning
that,
of a shot. Yeah.
But in general, when you're
effectively-
during a shot, you're not changing focus. You basically set the focus before the shot, get your shot, and then move on, right?
Yeah. So for all intents and purposes, like Remy, my focus is manual during a shot.
Now, what if you were trying to follow something that, was moving where you might not be able to keep an exact distance? Would you attempt continuous autofocus, or would you just use an aperture that's wide enough to give you a little leeway? How would you go about that?
I'd probably prefer to be on an aperture that gives me some leeway, because I'm just not someone who likes focus to change during a shot. Mm-hmm. The way I edit, my shots are kind of short, and even when I'm doing a crane shot, I feel like I want the movement to be the thing that's changing, and I'd rather see something come in and out of focus or come into focus at the end of a crane shot than be in focus the whole time and have the focus shift throughout. It's just the way that I like to build shots. I guess I feel like instead of refocusing, I can always edit to a new shot that is in focus.
Now, what if you were trying to do a West Wing style walk and talk where you're going to change subjects and distances all the time? I guess professionally they've got somebody pulling focus remotely for things like that.
Yeah. I mean,
if you were trying to pull that off as a one-man guy, what would you do?
I think I would go back in and turn continuous autofocus on, and I'd probably set it to the face tracking mode and let the camera track the face that I'm
pointed at?
I'm walking behind or walking ahead of.
I think you should do that.
But generally, actually, even with a walk and talk, though, I always love knowing that I'm the one who's controlling the focus. And if it's a walk and talk, unless I'm planning on changing the framing a lot, I could just set my focus at the beginning and know, okay, as long as they are this distance from the camera at all times, they're always in focus. And maybe I don't mind a little bit of moving in and out, but as long as I start and end in the same place relative to my subject, they should be in focus.
Could you manually focus while on a gimbal? Will it remove the shake well enough that you could pull focus as you move?
It's something I wouldn't have done on the GlideCam, the weight-based gimbal that we have, because I know that the moment I touch the camera, I'm going to bump it. It's going to move out of balance. But I do feel like maybe with the crane, because it has that electronic gimbal, that motor working to keep it stable, I might be able to get away with that. Because right now I'll do things like touch the LCD, and that's not a big deal. So maybe I could do some manual focus pulling.
Be cool to try.
Yeah. I think I'd be less concerned about like bumping the camera and more just in doing that, I would probably screw up the move that I'm trying to make. I'd probably distract myself.
We've got a question from Andrew. He says, Fiverr seems geared towards cheap and quick jobs that can be done remotely, like logo design and website creation. I would be interested to ask your listeners, as I'm always looking for more websites for work. What is Fiverr?
You've not heard of Fiverr?
Well, I have, but I thought that would be a good question to ask as part of this podcast.
It's funny. I've heard of Fiverr, but I don't know if maybe I've been to the website once, but I've never done anything on Fiverr. Have you ever requested a job on Fiverr?
I have not.
I mean, as the name suggests, I think it is kind of geared towards cheap jobs. Like, hey, here's something to do for $5, right?
Yep.
And I have heard of a lot of people doing like kind of web design and graphic design. So I think Andrew was wondering, maybe Fiverr's not the place for video, just because video should cost a lot more than that.
Yeah, they're all starting at video editing service, starting at $5.
Wow.
I think video editing is worth more than $5.
Yeah. Although some things, if it's template based, if it's like, hey, send me all your photos and I'm just going to drop them into this After Effects template that I have that turns it into a slideshow automatically, and there's a built-in music. I mean, you might be able to pump out
a bunch of those, yeah.
Photo slideshows for $20 a piece, and that would probably be appropriately priced for the website, right?
Yeah. Where else do you go to find work online?
I'm trying to think of the last time I did. I mean, for weddings, I did.
I was going to say, yeah, for weddings, I would use like the knot.com and what was the other one?
The Wedding Wire?
Wedding Wire, yep. And those the knot.com, though, was expensive to be listed on there, did bring me in work. It was worthwhile for me.
And I still see people using Craigslist to get video work. I think people are looking there.
I just always see the funny ones where people want, basically a full professional film crew for free.
Right.
Which are always entertaining to read.
Yeah, I imagine Fiverr's probably a great place to find a lot of people looking to hire you, but the cost expectation might be kind of low. So, as Andrew points out, Nick and I may not have many suggestions on websites to get work, but anything you've used, like Fiverr, if you've used Fiverr, let us know. I'd love to see if that's a good place to get work.
We can share that on the next episode.
Yeah. Did you ever get work through like Reddit?
I gave work through Reddit, but I never got work through Reddit.
Yeah. So you found video people through Reddit.
I did.
To take work, yeah.
I just figured that was a better place to find people who were actually, really engaged in filmmaking and might be interested in a little contract work. And that worked out very well.
There should be like a Tinder for video professionals
swipe,
and clients.
Swipe.
You're swiping
That's
between
our new
video
app
reels.
idea. That's
You're
our
just
new
watching
app
like
idea.
someone's cinematography reel, and then you're swiping out.
Maybe you just watch a over the shoulder shot of them editing, and you decide if you like the way they edit.
We got this tweet from Patrick Knowles, who he's a user that's new to the Sony A7R platform, and he's wondering which video picture profile we might recommend shooting under. I feel like this is a question I should ask Adam Ron. If he's listening, he should comment in the comments with what.
Well, I happen to have
picture profile
Adam
he
right
uses.
here. No, I don't. I'm in Las Vegas. That's a lie. I don't know anything about the Sony A7R platform, so I can't tell you. We use Natural on our Panasonics, but that's going to be a kind of a Panasonic-specific recommendation, I would say, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Sony has a similar picture profile. I mean, I don't feel like Natural is even very special. It looks to me like it's a little bit less color saturation, a little bit less contrast, and I like that look, and I feel like it's easy to color grade if I need to make some changes.
Yep, that's what we use. But if anyone else is using the Sony A7R platform and wants to recommend a color profile, we'll be happy to share.
Yeah.
We got another tweet from Nicholas. Maybe the same Nicholas, maybe not. Not
Yeah,
sure.
this is the same one from earlier, yeah.
Wedding audio question. I use a wireless Sennheiser lavalier mic for the groom, but I want to mic the bride too. I have no trouble with the groom, but I don't know which mic nor how not to be intrusive with the bride and her dress.
Have you
Griffin?
ever mic'd up a bride?
No, and I don't know a single bride that would allow me to put a mic on her beautiful wedding dress on her wedding day. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. So, Nicholas, my advice is the groom mic is good enough, and we'll pick them both up as they are usually facing each other when they do their vows. Now, what I do when I'm editing wedding videos is I usually put kind of an adjusted compressor on that audio track to help me quickly even out the audio levels between the bride and the groom, because the bride is going to be quieter. So if you set a compressor right, it'll bring up the quieter stuff without bringing up the louder stuff. So that makes life a little easier there, but usually it's plenty clear to pick up both of them. So that's what I do.
Yeah, I've always found that was good enough, or maybe even, I mean, I think even some weddings I did, maybe only the officiant was mic'd up. And if he or she is standing right there, that may be good enough to pick up both the bride and groom standing in front of that person.
That's a dangerous game to play, though.
Yeah,
because they are not
I
always
mean, the more
close.
mics you have in that area, you know, if you could mount a mic above them, there's some overhang thing that's happening above them. I mean, you could find some creative ways to get a mic close, and that was always good enough for me. I do think that it would certainly sound more professional. It would sound better if you could get her mic'd up, and they do make white lav mics. You could. I'm not too worried about where you'd put the mic. I'm worried more about where you'd put the mic transmitter.
Yeah, I mean, that would be in theater. You know, we would have mic packs that performers would wear under their costumes, and that's probably what you'd have to do is put a mic pack under the dress. It's just on a wedding day, you do not want to mess with the wedding dress. Would be my advice. Not worth the trouble.
Yeah.
When the groom mic works just fine.
I could certainly see a bride wanting this or thinking she wants this, though. And like a lot of client work, especially with weddings, it's all about just communicating things in advance and what that will get you. I mean, you could let a bride know, we could mic you up if you're willing to wear a transmitter that, you know, we'll put it on one side of your dress and it won't be visible in most photos, but could be visible in some. I almost think about if you could play a bride and groom, play them some audio. Like if you could almost compare, like, here's what a lav mic sounds like when it's right on you versus here's what a lav mic sounds like when it's 2 feet away from you, and just let them decide. Like, if you're happy with this, then we'll do it the way I always do it. But if you really want close, clear audio, then we need to figure out a way to get it on your dress.
Good luck.
But yeah, ultimately, I imagine your client would be like, oh no, I don't care about audio nearly as much as you care about audio. I definitely don't need that on my dress.
And in general, they do care about the dress.
Yeah. Our final question today is an email from Warren, who is working on a project and he's recording different resolutions and frame rates. So for example, he's shooting 1080 at 60 frames per second, and then sometimes he's shooting 4K at 24 frames per second so that he can do slow-mo. He's wondering if he's correct that Final Cut can handle all these different file types and find common ground for him. But he's wondering if it's any better to shoot the same thing for Final Cut.
Well, Final Cut, whatever you define your project as is what it's going to use. So if you create a 4K 24 frame per second project, it's going to, your 4K 24 frame stuff will fit fine. Your 1080p stuff, it's going to upscale and drop frames.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it will figure it out for you. But there is always a cost to having to transform something into a different resolution and or frame rate. So, you know, if you shoot 60p and you drop it onto a 30p timeline, that's perfectly fine. There's really no loss there. You're just skipping every other frame. But 24 into 60, does that work? Oh, that does work too, right?
Well, yeah, 60, when you drop it in a 24 frame timeline, you're dropping 60% of the frames. So 3 out of every 5 frames disappear, which is not an even.
Right, so you get some judder.
Yeah, if you're really eagle-eyed, you'll notice that there's a different amount of judder between each frame, which to me looks annoying. But I think if your shutter speed is long enough, I think if you're recording with a longer shutter speed, you wouldn't really notice that too much.
But I mean, I think that's reasonable. Normally shooting in 4K 24p, and then, you know, knowing when you want slow-mo that to drop down to 1080 and get some more frames. I think in slow motion that's going to work just fine because you're stretching it out and using every frame. You just want to, and Griffin, I'm sure you know the math, you want to do the slow-mo at the appropriate rate so it just plays every frame and isn't interpolating at all. And
that gets to Warren's second question. He was wondering if, knowing that he's using slow-mo, he's putting the 60 frame footage into his 24 frame timeline. He's wondering what percent speed he should use. And he was under the incorrect assumption that if he went to like 25% or 50%, like these even speeds that actually Final Cut suggests these speeds, 25% and 50%. If he goes to those, then he would have the smoothest slow motion. But that's actually really wrong in this case.
Well, it depends. If he's talking about doing a 4K 24p timeline, then that is incorrect. If he were doing a 30p timeline, then that would be correct.
Right. Yeah, you put 60 frame footage in a 30 frame timeline, you put it at 50%, and you're showing every single frame. You're not dropping every other frame when it's at 100% speed. When you're at 50%, you're just showing all of them, so it's going to be perfectly smooth. But I recommended to him that after you've chosen the correct project settings, the frame rate you want your final video to be, when you drop in your slow motion stuff, just select automatic speed in the retiming menu in Final Cut, and it will just choose that percentage speed that uses every single frame.
What would that percentage be in this particular situation, Griffin?
40%. If you drop 60 frame footage into a 24 frame timeline, it'll be 40% speed.
And that's perfect. That's showing every frame for 1 frame per second.
Yeah. But my point to him was, don't look for even percentages, because that can be misleading. Like, if you brought in 180 frames per second, the super slow-mo that the GH5 can shoot in 1080, it can do 180 frames. If you bring that into a 30 frame timeline, for example, that would be, let's see, I think it's 16.6666. Yeah. So the perfect slow motion speed for 180 in a 30 frame timeline would be 16.66 repeating speed, which sounds bad. Like, clearly that won't be smooth because it's such a weird number, but it's not. It's
showing every frame for 1 frame per second. Yeah.
Yeah. It just happens to come out to a really ugly percentage.
So in Final Cut, what do? You go to the retime menu and you choose automatic speed, and it just does it for you.
Yeah, it'll just pick the right frame rate for you.
Beautiful. Now, that won't work when you're doing 60p on a 60p timeline or 24p on a 24p timeline, right? Because that would just be normal speed. In those cases, that's when you can use the 50% or 25%. But just know it's going to have to make up frames.
Yeah. Yeah. 60 would clearly be 100% speed in a 60 frame timeline. I feel like this is what always confuses people when they're new to slow motion, is they're not really thinking about what is the source, what is the project settings. Because everything can be slow motion if you pick a project that is a slower frame rate than what you, or fewer frames than what you shot per second.
Yep. Problem solved.
Well, that was our final question today, Nick.
Very good, very good. So maybe by next week I'll have unboxed this monitor. Looking forward to some feedback from everybody as to what they'd like me to test and what workflows they'd like to see. Again, I have a Mac and a PC, so I was thinking maybe I might try it on both and just see how tough it is to actually edit in HDR these days, if it's even possible. What problems I'm going to have. I'm excited.
Oh, and I have an event coming up that I should let people know about.
Ooh.
In about 2 weeks, on Tuesday, April 17th, I'm teaching a filmmaking workshop at Illinois State University.
Oh, very cool.
So anyone who is in Illinois...
You were just there.
Yeah, I was just there doing our podcast a few weeks back. And while I was there, they invited me to come teach a workshop during Com Week. It's this week-long thing the School of Communication does where it's all kind of entrepreneurship focused and career building put on by the School of Communication. So I'm teaching a documentary filmmaking workshop. And if you are in the area, you are welcome to come. It's free. It's Tuesday, April 17th, and you can go to Hey.film to find all those event details.
Will you be recording this and sharing the event as well, or is this live and in person only?
It's mostly in person, but I am going to be filming it. I haven't yet decided what I'll do with that, but I've realized I want to get in the habit of filming more of these workshops that I'm giving, and maybe I'll edit them into some sort of masterclass thing, or maybe I'll share pieces of them online.
Very cool.
Or maybe I'll end up feeling generous and just put the whole thing online.
You're not very generous, so it doesn't seem likely. Just kidding. Well, Mr. Hammond, I hope you feel better.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sticking with me for 45
week.
minutes. Yep, we'll talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Yep, my whole PC is rebooting now.
Maybe your new home just has, like, terrible power.
Could. My internet speed is not right, so I gotta fix that. How fast is your internet? It's super slow, right?
I mean, I get 30 megabits per second.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Really slow.